Hello everyone, and apologies for the delay. We were actually having problems with their sound, so that's why there's a few minutes delay on the 10:30 start. So again, apologies for that. Hi everyone, and welcome to Effective Software's Three Panes of Risk Assessments webinar. Myself, David Rowland, and my colleague Mandy McClellan. Say hello, Mandy. she will be taking you
Good
through.
morning, everyone.
She'll be taking you through this morning's content. So the webinar will run for approximately 20 minutes and will focus on the three most common pains we hear from health and safety professionals that encounter when approaching risk assessment procedures. The audience will be muted throughout the webinar, but I'll be taking your questions, and so you can send on any of your questions that you have via the questions tab on the right hand side of your screen. We do have over 100 attendees, so if you don't get a chance to answer any of your questions during the webinar, please make sure you do send them on, but we will get back to you as soon as we can after the webinar. So without further ado, I'll introduce you again to Mandy, and she'll run through the content.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So as Dave mentioned there, I'm just going to be taking you through what we typically hear at the business here from clients that we're working with as far as when they're switching away from more manual or maybe labor-intensive processes for the risk assessment, some of the things that stand out for themselves. So I'm just going to get underway here. So some of the common pains that people would mention to ourselves would be basically that they're managing through manual processes, so maybe all of their risk assessments live in paper files and filing cabinets, what have you. A massive amount of Excel spreadsheets or shared folders across the business can be difficult to control. And then as well, any sort of control measures or actions that they are putting into place to help manage that risk, it typically relies on the health and safety manager to be doing emails and phone calls. So not always the most streamlined process, and not always the best to make sure that all of these things are being closed out the way that you'd prefer. So what we can typically here is that this kind of rolls into uncontrolled data, so that you might have all of your risk assessments held in maybe different sites or silos across the business, meaning that some of those revisions can be difficult to track. So you might have certain areas of the business that would be working off of last year's risk assessment just simply because you don't have a centralized database for them to be accessing everything. Then again, any kind of changes that might be made, they're not always documented by revision control, so that can be changed or deleted at any time. Not always giving you the best resource for all of your information. And then as well, from a health and safety perspective, that those review dates might not be automated into your calendar, so you'll have to rely on kind of your own skill set to make sure that those are actually being reviewed on the process dates that you've set out in place. And all of this will result in typically a lack of oversight in the business. So your risks might not be easily identified, and you might not always have the best plans of action in place to lower those risk levels. So how we think we can help here from Effective Software is that first and foremost, obviously, with a cloud-based system, you're going to have all of your risk assessments located in one centralized database. So this might mean different things for different businesses. You might segment out those risk assessments by maybe a risk level or a department type, even different sites if you've got multiple ones in your business. But the goal being that everyone that you want to have access to the system can tie in directly to see the most live and up-to-date resources that you've got on the system there.
Sorry, Mandy, could I just jump in there? We've just got our first question there, and this is regarding risk assessments. We've a person here trying to find out, is there any restrictions to the amount of risk assessments that they can create on the system?
No, absolutely. So one of the things that's very inherent and a core principle for ourselves at Effective would be the fact that you have access to create, delete, revise as many risk assessments as you want on the system. So it's not a pay-to-play system. Basically, you can create as many different templates across as many different scoring criteria, across as many different business units as obviously you see fit. So we'd have clients that would be looking to manage not only health and safety accreditations and whatnot risks to the business, but because of the flexibility of the system, you can actually use it to track, like I've heard of a client using it to track ISO 27001, so data security. And it's just a matter of using different configurable calculation methods and then obviously calling out those risks that would be specific to yourself.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mandy.
No trouble. So in the background, obviously, what Effective should be doing is really helping you to support your plan, do, check, act. So you're going to be able to complete an easy and referenceable risk assessment on the system, send that over for approval, or make sure that any revisions or whatnot are tracked and maintained to your standards. And then as well, any of those resulting control measures, you'll be able to action them out and follow them through to completion as well. So a full paper trail. Basically, you're turning your risk assessment into a living document. And then as well in the background, a revision schedule will come up for yourself based on obviously your preferences, and you'll be able to continue that process as you go along. So just maintaining that you've got all your referenceable materials to support your duty of care. And then obviously this will feed into some reporting. So you'll be able to actually pull out data based on different risk hazards or risk areas within the business and share this maybe across the executive branch or your line managers, whatever the structure is for your business. But the goal being that everyone can see maybe where the riskier areas of the business lie and then help to manage that risk through maybe training or PPE and just be more on those proactive measures, relying more on those leading indicators rather than the lagging. Now, one of the second pains that we usually hear would be a lack of engagement. So a lot of businesses now are trying to filter out health and safety throughout the business. So it's not just that one or two people are really responsible for making the entire business safe, that everyone feels some amount of ownership to that process. But typically what we find is that the tools that are in place can restrict people's engagement levels. So if they have a very complex system or it requires a huge amount of paperwork for them to get through, they're generally not that energetic about doing it. And as a result, obviously, this can suffer. So your data can suffer, your availability to understand the risks to the business can suffer, and that knocks on into your reporting. So it's very difficult for you to maybe report up to the higher branches within the business and really call out where the risks to the business lie. So where we believe we can help you with that is first and foremost by giving simple and easy to use tools for everyone in the business to access. So obviously this is going to be dependent on the levels of access you want to give to your employees, but basically an easy and open to use platform where you can quickly call out or identify the hazards or the risks to the business. Now we can also use templates, so if you have commonly identified kind of risks but you want to maybe modify them for a specific task or a specific type of machinery, you can utilize those templates so that you're basically offering up some recommendations of where the hazards are, but then the user can actually configure the control measures to make sure that they're managing the risk specific to that particular item or area that you're risk assessing. And as I just mentioned there earlier, all of your scoring criteria is completely configurable to yourself. So different businesses will use completely different scoring criteria. We know it's very subjective, so that's why the configuration is left there open for yourselves. Now rolling on from that.
Sorry, Mandy.
Oh,
sorry
go
just
ahead.
to butt in again. But we have a question here about what types of risk calculators do ourselves actually supply to the customer?
So we can build out standardized calculators, that's no trouble, but really it is an open source template. So we would build the first couple calculators alongside yourselves to match your processes, but at any point your higher level admins will be able to configure those or change them and create as many different calculation methods as they see fit.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Mandy.
No trouble. One of the other tools that we're really excited to be launching here in the very near future, so we're just in the final stages of testing with some clients, is our hazard reporting application. So this can live obviously on a smartphone or a tablet, but essentially you can go and report hazards in different locations, attach images, and all of those classifications and categories would be, again, completely configurable to your business. So giving you a very quick and easy tool that you can identify the risks within the business, report on those risks, and then maybe adjust your risk assessment methods to suit that purpose. And again, just feeding into those reporting, so you'll be able to call out those risks based on obviously the reporting that you're pulling from that hazard app. Now, one of the final pains that we typically hear is an inability to prove duty of care. So most businesses that we speak with would say quite quickly and easily that we know we're doing the right things. We know that we're doing the training. We know that we're doing our risk assessments. We know that we're putting our control measures in place. But the trick lies in actually being able to document that. So in the event of an adverse incident or accident happening on one of your sites, that you actually have all your documentation, all of the paper trail there to prove your duty of care. And this will roll into the things of like risk training. There would be a lot of kind of one-on-one training with individuals or staff, letting them know what the risks are to their maybe particular tasks or role within the business, but that training might not always be documented. So if an event does occur, that could be one of the red flags or gaps in the process. And then as well as we mentioned, having to manually manage all of those scheduling or refresher dates, that can put a lot of strain on a health and safety manager or someone that's tasked with that duty. And we're all human, things can fall through the cracks. So without an automated process to be reminding you in the background, that can be one of the areas where there is a weakness. So how we believe we can help would be, first and foremost, within the risk assessment module, there is a capacity to track all of your risk training compliance. So a simple, visual, easy-to-use matrix, red, amber, green, will flag up the individuals that you've trained against specific risks to the business. So this might be risk assessments that you've got here, and obviously then you can filter down through different locations, different departments within locations, so you can get a quick snapshot view of your compliance ratings. And obviously there can be an attachment of sign-off sheets or anything that you would like to further prove that you've actually done training with this person. And then following through, as I mentioned there earlier, all of your control measures are essentially actions within the system. So if you have a control measure that you want to be put into place but isn't currently there, you can simply just create an action, and basically the risk assessment module will do that for you automatically. And then you can classify and prioritize that action to however you would like to proceed. So all of that is, again, configurable. That the benefit here that we've seen a lot of businesses take advantage of is that they can actually almost turn this into an auditing process. So they can issue out a repeating action maybe on a monthly, quarterly, 6-monthly basis, whatever is preferable to yourself. So in addition to your annual review of your risk assessments, you can actually audit specific or maybe high priority control measures on a frequency that you see fit. And what's going to happen is in your actual report for your risk assessment, those actions are going to continuously log with a date stamp and a user stamp. So you'll know who did what to maintain this control measure and when they did it. And this creates a very powerful piece of information to prove your duty of care, in the sense that you'll be able to show not only are you calling out the risks to the business, but you're actually putting in place all of the measures and verifying that they are in place on a repeating frequency. So what this all rolls into is obviously proving your duty of care and protecting the business, and there's a couple of reasons why clients would actually do this. So first and foremost, I mean, everyone is concerned about the health and safety of their employees. Happy and safe feeling employees typically do work much better. So this is why being able to put these measures into place and being more proactive, relying on your leading indicators, is very important for the future of the business. And obviously, reputationally, this has a lot of effects. We all hear the horror stories of businesses that have had a tremendous event on site, even a death, the worst nightmare for any health and safety person, or obviously the higher ups at a business. If you've worked very hard to maintain a positive safety reputation for the business, that's something that you want to maintain, and this can knock onto positive productivity and also financial. So we all know that the HSE, HSA has the ability to levy severe financial fines if there's a big gap in the health and safety processes. But also that feeds into reputation as well. Clients and businesses are less likely to work with maybe a business that they feel that is risky, or an organization that has had a number of health safety claims raised against them. So all of this ties in together. If you've got happier employees, safer employees, you will in fact have a safer business, and that will protect you both financially and for the future. So that's it for us here today. Be happy to take any more questions that we might have.
Yeah, I have a few questions here. Again, fire us over any of your questions that you have. I know we have 5 minutes left in the webinar, so yeah, we take as many as we can. But I have a question here, Mandy, just regards the hazards and the hazard aspect that you brought up earlier in the webinar. So do you give us pre-made hazard sets?
No. So what we would do as part of the onboarding is that we would actually sit with yourselves, understand what it is that you want to be tracking and how, because this can be completely different from organization to organization, and we would build those classifications or hazard sets into the software for you. So I always like to describe it, the software as kind of a framework, and we fill that framework with the language and the classifications that make sense for the individual's business.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Yeah, we have another question, and it's just regarding risk assessments and editing actions. It says, are the existing classifications, are they industry specific, or are they pre-canned?
And again, very much similar to the exact same answer there before. This would be very much something that we would tailor to yourself. So we don't believe that there's a one-size-fits-all to health and safety. Absolutely within our remit, the configuration aspect is very much left to suit an individual's business. So what one business wants to track versus another by ways of actions or risks or classifications may not always be the case. So that's why we have a completely open source platform where we can build in any type of classification or risk hazard level.
Brilliant. Thanks, Manny. Thanks for that. I think that's just coming up to the 20-minute mark. So again, I'd like to thank you for your time this morning. I hope that the content that was discussed was of benefit to you. Again, if you have any questions regarding any of the content that's contained today, please get in contact with us. I think we will be sending out the recording to you as well, so you can have that as a resource in your company to send off to whoever you may see fit. But yeah, again, thanks very much for today, and thanks very much for your attention, and hope to talk to you soon.